Welcome back. Now the battle for freedom, the battle for the freedom of speech continues apace. And a lot of people think, oh, Britain is, we've got freedom of speech. Well, more and more laws are coming in, rules, regulations that make that contention doubtful. And our next guest, he's from the Freedom Association. He's the chief executive. And, you know, he's been a guest on my shows many times over the years. And he fights the good fight to make sure that people in this country are allowed to say pretty much just exactly what they want to. I spoke to him yesterday, and he listened to my guest yesterday, Mark Glendenning from the Institute of Economic Affairs, and we were talking about the workers' rights bills, which will allow workers to sue their bosses if a customer insults them. Any time a worker feels that in some way he's been offended by something or someone outside of the control of the boss, he can sue the boss for lots and lots of money. Now that is an attack on freedom of speech. And there are many other similar measures in play or coming into play. I'm warning you, this place is getting more sinister by the day. And my next guest, I think, will confirm that, who depressingly says he feels he's losing the battle for freedom of speech. Let's talk to the Chief Executive of the Freedom Association, Andrew Allison. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Kevin.
This is downbeat, but to tell us why, you know, given that you listened to my interview with Mark Glendenning from the IEA yesterday about the Workers' Rights Bill, it's not just that, but tell us about these increasing attacks on what we used to take for granted in this free country, that the citizens of this free country should be allowed to say just exactly what they want.
It feels like sort of woke culture is a contagion that's spreading like wildfire at the moment. I mean, there was a survey done a couple of years ago where people felt that they were less free to speak their minds than there were 5 years prior to that. Now, bear in mind, that's only 2015 to 2016. Things have changed. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and I chaired a panel discussion with some academics on academic freedom and examples of trigger warnings in universities. You know, students can just turn around and say, well, because my lecturer raised an eyebrow at me, that's aggressive behavior. It's a microaggression. And how academics are just walking on eggshells. And this is happening all around us. And I don't feel that we're really getting a lot of support from the party that we would have thought we would have got support from, which is the Conservative Party. I mean, I speak to many peers and MPs, down to councillors and other activists and party members who are very annoyed about this cancel culture that we're living through at the moment. But one of them last week admitted to me that, you know, in the 2019 intake, I mean, he barely knows most of them, and they just don't seem to have any sort of ideology about them. They don't seem to be interested in freedom issues. You know, we have the 10th anniversary of Margaret Thatcher's death at the weekend, where she stood for free markets and free people and free speech. I mean, an example is Christian Wakeford, who was elected as the Conservative MP for Bury South in 2019, and he defected to Labour last year, and he doesn't seem to have any sort of ideology or any conservatism about it. So I think, you know, we really are losing the fight and we need some more allies.
And the problem is, Andrew, I would suggest that too many modern Conservative politicians, MPs, cabinet ministers, have forgotten one of the central backbones of conservatism, which is individual liberty, the freedom of the individual to do and to say as he or she pleases without interference from the state. Obviously, there are limits to that. You can't harm others, but within reason, you should be allowed to say whatever you like. I heard a debate the other day and the proposal was, when does freedom of speech become offensive? Which absolutely misses the point. You can be offensive, unlike the Merseyside police, who put up a big billboard a few months back saying to be offensive is an offence. The chief of police there didn't seem to understand to be offensive is not an offence. So people don't understand what freedom of speech is about. It is the freedom to say just exactly what you like as long as you don't physically harm others.
Well, precisely. You can't issue threats of violence, or you can't do death threats for obvious reasons, because that's taking away other people's freedom.
Yes.
I mean, if you start to try and prevent people from walking safely down their streets by making threats at them, that's it again, taking away their freedoms. But these are extreme examples. I'm pleased you raised the one with Merseyside Police, and all fairness to Merseyside Police, they quickly got rid of that billboard because it was
because they realised they didn't understand the damn law. Unbelievable, they're coppers.
Which is very worrying. But you know, there are so many other examples that we come across with cancel culture. In particular, I mean, take Jeremy Clarkson's Sun column at the end of last year. Now, I wouldn't have written what he wrote about Meghan Markle. I wouldn't have phrased it in that way. But it was a column. It was a provocative column, and yet you had members of Parliament writing to the editor of the Sun saying that he should be disciplined or he should be fired. Get out of the way. I mean, members of Parliament have parliamentary privilege. They can stand in the chamber of the House of Commons and say pretty much what they like, and they will never be sued for it. Whereas if they'd said it outside of the chamber of the House of Commons, like the rest of us, then they would be sued for it. So I think it's a bit rich coming from parliamentarians who defend their right to freedom of speech right until the death, but won't defend our right to freedom of speech.
Yeah, of course, Jeremy Clarkson apologised for his very nasty comments about Meghan Markle, but here's to the editor of The Sun for sticking by his columnist. She's a she. I mean, here's another freedom issue, right? If a publican, a landlady, if she wants to collect gollywog dolls, should be able to do that. And if someone comes into the pub and say, I find those gollywog dolls offensive, I understand why people don't like them. I'm not that keen on them myself. But in Britain, you know, if she wants to put them up in her pub, it doesn't... You know, what on earth is happening when 6 Essex coppers raid her pub and take the offending dolls away in a hate crime investigation? Hate crimes are the enemy of freedom of speech.
They are, and it's interesting that 6 police officers can turn up to do that at a pub, but you'd be lucky to get 2 around to your house very quick if it was burgled. I mean, but that is the truth of the matter, isn't it? I mean, I don't particularly like the gollywog dolls, but I mean, we used to be able just to rub along together, didn't we? If we didn't like something, we just didn't go there. You know, if we didn't like that pub, we just don't go to that pub. We go somewhere else. But it's not just people who were offended, it's people who were offended on other people's behalf that can then sort of contact the police and complain that there's a hate crime that has taken place. Now, it's looking like these, what do they call them again, the non-crime hate incidents that have been reported in the past. It looks like they're going away, quite rightly so. If it isn't a crime, then why the hell are the police getting involved in it? So that's quite rightly so. But we need to look at the whole hate crime legislation.
Get rid of them, Andrew. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Tony Blair brought in the hate crime, the first hate crime laws in 1997, and these were the first laws for hundreds of years in this country that legislated what you can and cannot say. Once we got into the area of being able to be prosecuted for things you might say, we entered a dark phase, and I think we should get rid of them. I want to move on just before you go. You're a high-flying chief executive. The CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, isn't it, is a revered organisation. It was a revered organisation. The chief executive of the CBI yesterday, Tony Danker, was summarily dismissed amid allegations of serious sexual misconduct. 3 other executives stepped down or have been suspended. There are allegations of rape, as I say, sexual abuse, females being terrified. What on earth is going on at the CBI?
Well, the CBI has been a corporatist organisation for a very long time. It hasn't really been defending the rights of small businesses, and it did its best to try and prevent us leaving the European Union. But let's park that to one side. I mean, I think that Tony Danker will be taking legal action against the CBI. So I don't want to say too much, because the normal process here is that he is suspended, which he was, to just fire him now with no severance pay and with no real explanation as to exactly why he's been fired. I think he'll be taking that to the courts. But, you know, other than that, what's going on inside there, it seems very worrying.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Danker did point out, and as you quite rightly say, Andrew, we don't know the details of this case. And he said that he was disappointed to be summarily dismissed because he was not given the opportunity to tell his side of the story. And this does seem to be quite a familiar scenario, yes, doesn't it? That
is the problem. It happens too often, Kevin.
We live in the age of the accusation, don't we?
We do. Often people are dismissed. I mean, the late great Sir Roger Scruton was fired from his post. I can't remember which cabinet minister did it, but he was fired about a year before he died for comments that he gave to George Eaton in an interview for the New Statesman. It turned out that George Eaton had actually sort of selectively used those words. And then, of course, apologies came afterwards. But the trouble is, he'd still been fired from his job. You know, there wasn't a proper investigation done there. So it does happen too often.
Indeed, and that is another attack on freedom that, you know, if somebody turns round, maybe with malicious intent, and makes up a story about you, say Andrew Allison, you know, sexually abused me, you know, I'm sure the Freedom Association would be a bit better than this, but, you know, you're immediately suspended or sacked, you know, without the accusations being proved.
Some of these suspensions, Kevin, go on for a very long time. We have one MP who was suspended, I think, nearly a year ago now on some sort of allegations, and yet we still don't know who that member of parliament is. And we still don't know where those investigations are, and nothing seems to be happening. So that particular member of parliament's life is sort of on hold. Yeah. And has been on hold for about 9 or 10 months without anything happening. And I mean, I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago with Harvey Proctor, who was named.
Oh God, yeah, I mean
that was a terrible case. And do you know, Kevin, he wasn't even arrested by the police, but his name was put out there, and he had to leave with his partner for a few months because he was getting death threats. I mean, this is the sort of country that we're living in, and things really do need to change. And it's really up to the ordinary people of Britain to really say, we're not going to put up with this, and things desperately need to change. Otherwise, life in Britain is going to change completely.
Yeah, we need a more vigilant government to stand up to this pernicious wokery. And by the way, I do know who that MP is, and I've been desperately trying to find out what that case is all about. You try. You will not be told a damn thing. It's opaque, to say the least. Andrew, fantastic to talk to you. That's Andrew Allison, the Chief Executive of the Freedom Association.